show that brings finality to all the critical issues. It is the stage where all the facts are checked, issues thoroughly interrogated, opinions shaped, and debates settled. But over here, we do more than just talk. We resolve problems. We hold those in power accountable. We address all the key happenings in society, from politics to health to education to everything you deem important. And we will center the voice of the ordinary Ghanaian. This is the show that sets the agenda.
Agenda now shows on Tuesdays at 9 p.m. on TV3.
TV3.
The year 2025 came with different things for many different people. For those who suddenly realized that they had lost power, to those who woke up to the brightness of the authority that the country could give them, and also to the economic changes that Ghanaians witnessed, to the judiciary and the changes. For the first time in the history of Ghana, a Chief Justice was removed, to a parliament that never ceases to surprise. The chaos we saw in February, and of course, just this month, Ghanaians have had a full 2025. Well, that's what we want to look at tonight. We're just today for the year 2025 to end. Hello, good evening, and welcome to the year 2025 in review. My name is Beatrice Edu, and tonight we are going to go into the very big issues that dominated conversations and also questioned whether or not the country was moving forward, and really looking into 2025, what needs to be done to ensure that the country continues to remain on track. I'll be joined in studio by my colleague very shortly to go into some of the highlights. Of course, we'll also be joined as well by a number of experts who go into what happened this year and really their perspective of things, even going into 2026. Good evening again. My name is Beatrice Edu. Thank you once again for joining us on the program 2025 Year in Review. But first, let's give you a bit of what transpired in Parliament, the chaotic scenes, and what made all of us talking.
Honorable members.
Right from the eve of inauguration of the 9th Parliament, tempest flared up. The secondment of a motion to elect the Speaker drew sharp swords.
I will
do right
to
all manner of persons without fear or favor, affection or ill will. So help me God.
Alban Sumana Kingsford Bagbin was re-elected the Speaker together with his two deputies, Bernard Ahiafo and Andrew Asiama Mwako.
Discharge the duties of a member of Parliament. So help me God.
Members-elect of Parliament officially took duty, but shortly after the majority's front bench was reshuffled after the first ministerial appointment. Minority Leader Fanyo Makin had some accurate predictions.
Kwame Abuja is going to roads and highways. Yeah, we know Ahmed Ibrahim is going to local government. And a lot of you will remain at the backbench. That's why I know Nabo Ayarega is going to assume the black chair. And his deputy is my good friend, Kweku Rickett.
Then came the ministerial vetting chaos that caught global attention. Members of Parliament were seen destroying public property.
Consequently, the Speaker of Parliament has suspended 4 members of Parliament, including Roxy Nelson Dafia-Mekpo, Jerry Ahmed Shaib, as well as Frank Anodompre and Alhassan Tampuli, with immediate effect beginning Friday 31st January 2025.
Minority MPs fought back.
Earlier, in front of Parliament and at the entrance of Parliament, they were chanting war songs.
But the act of indiscipline and use of unsavory language continued unpunished.
Honorable Nitiwul, you don't have the floor. Resume your seat. Please resume your seat.
President Mahama delivered his first State of the Nation address, which was soon followed by government first budget read by the finance minister. Do you remember this?
The Minority Caucus calls on national security to, as a matter of urgency, make public the content of cargo suspected to be cocaine and cash transported into the country by 2 suspicious flights.
This generated much controversy, and later minority MPs solidarized with him when security officials stormed his house.
But it is clear, what they've done is a breach of privilege and immunity. It's obvious.
After months of electoral dispute, Ablekuma North got a new MP, Irabin Obin. The House was dealt a heavy blow. Then NPP MP for Akwetia, Ernest Kumi, passed on, resulting in a by-election NDC won. But there were promises.
Confidently, I'm telling you, mark my words. I can even tell you that if we lose this election, I'll resign as a member of Parliament. I'm telling you, we'll win this election.
If he doesn't, I will write to the Speaker of Parliament. And he must apologize in the floor of Parliament so that the whole public will see who he is.
A month later, a helicopter crash killed another MP, Dr. Murtala Mohammed. 2 separate by-elections were held. 2 new MPs, Professor Lidu Seidu of Tamale Central and Bernard Bediako of Akwetia, were sworn in, giving majority 189 MPs against 87 for minority. Parliament then vetted and approved Chief Justice Bafo Boni despite strong opposition from the minority.
There seems to be a very, very conspicuous silence on this. The attempt by this government, by blocking this bill and blocking it from being featured, is a big disappointment to the people of this country.
The anti-LGBTQ debate resurfaced. The minority accused Parliament of frustrating the process, but Speaker ruled.
The 8th Parliament is history. So are all the businesses that were pending in the 8th Parliament. They know my passion in this matter, and I want to get it properly passed so that implementation becomes easier.
Government abolished the COVID-19 levy, the Burton tax and others in the 2026 budget.
I'm proud to say that I'm happy to announce that today, COVID-19 levy is accordingly abolished. Mr. Speaker.
More drama unfolded in the chamber when MPs almost traded blows in a minority protest over a clerk notice to Electoral Commission announcing vacancy in Pandai.
For the year
2026, I so move. Thank you.
They are wearing face masks. They don't want Ghanaians to identify them. If you are ashamed of what you are doing, remove your face mask. I will let the Ghanaians know that you are only pretending to be Democrats. You are not Democrats.
For attending an ECOWAS meeting when he was not a delegate, the minority leader was referred to the Privileges Committee, but he would not yield.
The minorities leader's seat at ECOWAS Parliament is not one of those that can be removed. He shall remain until April 2028, when his tenure shall have come to an end.
The purchase of a new presidential jet and 4 helicopters for the military was not taken lightly by the minority MPs. The House went on recess approving key legislations, including the abolishment of the law that permits mining in forest reserves, while reversing the names of some universities to their old status. Speaker Bagbin received more global recognitions, including being part of a team to mediate the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Undeniably, the 9th Parliament has done some great work, yet it has failed to take decisive action to address situations that damaged the image of the House. Many wonder if it is gearing up to take the title of the most chaotic Parliament, even when judged by its first year alone. Christian Yale, TV3 News, Parliament.
Many wonder indeed, and I believe you still remember those scenes as we brought most of them alive to you. Let me say I'm joined via video call now by Dr. Rashid Draman. He's the Executive Director, African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, ACEPA. Doc, if you can hear me, good evening. Thank you so much, and happy end of year 2025. Okay, Doc, I can see you, but I can't hear you. I guess you're muted. Would you kindly unmute yourself?
Okay, let me see.
Great.
I'm not muted. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope you can hear us as well.
Yes, I can hear you clear.
Wonderful. We're also joined by Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah, who is a governance expert. Prof, it's great to have you as well. Happy end of 2025, sir.
Thank you, and thanks for having me once again.
Let me start with you, Dr. Draman. I mean, we've just watched a recap, really, of what transpired in Parliament from January till now. Let me get your reaction to a number of the things that happened there, the good, the bad, and you could add the ugly part of it.
Well, thank you very much. So I want to divide maybe what Parliament did into two categories. I mean, maybe three. First of all, their work in the area of lawmaking. I mean, you cited some of the bills that have been cancelled, and a number of others that have been passed, which many Ghanaians have described as progressive. In all, during this session, which consisted of 3 meetings, I think they passed, all about 40 bills into law, of course, including those nuisance ones that were cancelled and so on as part of the appropriations that we saw at the beginning of the year in March, and then the most recent budget that was passed. When it comes to oversight, which I think is the most important role of our Parliament, because that is the weakest link. That is an area where Parliament after Parliament, I think they have failed to really hold the government of the day to account, except in the 8th Parliament when we had a divided House. When it came to that, I think it was to be expected that we were not going to see very much from the majority side, because they would not be shouting at their own government. But we were expecting that those who were very vocal in the 8th Parliament, holding the government of the day accountable, we were hoping, perhaps maybe wrongly, that they were going to do the same, even when it was their government that was in power. We didn't hear very much. The budget process came and passed without very much that Ghanaians have heard of. And I think it is not because maybe everything was good about the budget, but I believe it was just because of the overwhelming numbers that the majority has in the House.
Doc, do I hear you say that perhaps with the huge numbers of the majority, we're beginning to see a sign of rubber stamp Parliament? Because now you're saying people or the minority might not have raised a lot of issues just because of the numbers.
Yeah, the majority, So let me put this in a better context so that Ghanaians can understand this and we can all educate ourselves a little bit. So I've been following and working with our Parliament since, I believe, the 2nd Parliament. Until we got to the 8th Parliament, I didn't know that Parliament had the kind of powers, particularly when it came to the power of the purse, that Parliament could ask the executive to go back and prepare better and come. We saw what happened, and if we just single out the e-levy, we saw how that policy, you saw how the minority at the time was able to get it from whatever percentage to the percentage that we had until it was recently repealed. And what happened between the first parliament and the seventh parliament was that in each of the parliaments, by and large, one party or the other had a majority. So the power of the purse almost got lost on parliament. When we go to the 8th parliament, suddenly everything changed. And like I said, I have been watching and working with our parliament since the 2nd parliament. It was until the 8th parliament that I really got to know that really what was preventing parliament from exercising that very important and onerous duty was because of the numbers that each party had in the previous successive parliaments.
Doc, let me ask you this very briefly.
Yes. So fast forward to the 9th parliament, we are beginning to see the same things that we have seen between the 1st and the 7th parliament. So that's what I'm trying to explain, that we didn't see very much happen during the budget process.
So let me ask you this briefly.
Yes.
Yes. Let me ask you this briefly before I come to Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah, who is here to give us his first thought. Are you, of course, you've talked about the bit about not seeing much during the budget and all of that. We had the minority then, after the election, which became majority, saying that they were not going to abuse their numbers in Parliament. 12 months down the line or 11 months down the line, would you say that the majority has stuck to that promise of ensuring that irrespective of the huge numbers, they've not abused anything in the House? Briefly, before I go to Prof.
Well, yes, it's early days yet. So if there's one area where we could say they have abused their numbers, I think it is in terms of their presence in the House. The sheer kind of continuous, persistent absenteeism that we saw in the House, I mean, for me, was very disappointing, particularly when it comes to the NDC, because of the numbers that they have and the fact that, sometimes speaker after speaker has had to adjourn the House because of lack of quorum to do government business. And if a party has about 188 and you just need about 90 MPs to do business, to form a quorum and start the business of the House, I think they have a lot of explanations to give to Ghanaians. And for me, that's the beginning of the abuse of the numbers that they have.
Doc, I'll come back to you, but I'm coming to you, Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah. Looking at the kind of parliaments we had, we showed you the video. We've had the perspective of Dr. Rashid Draman as well. How do you think these things define perhaps the health of our governance system with Parliament in focus based on what you monitored over the last 11 months?
Well, thank you. Excuse me, I'm very cool. I think Dr. Dramani certainly works very closely with Parliament, and I do respect his views. And I think overall, Parliament has done what it got, given the considerable majority.
Okay, Prof, forgive me to interrupt. Yes. I would give you a second to take a sip of water, if that would help.
Yes.
But I want us to move to our second area, which is actually a historic moment in Ghana's history where we had a sitting Chief Justice removed because the petition was presented against her that she had misconducted herself. And as you're aware, the President, after consultation with the Council of State, then established a committee according to Article 146. Eventually, the committee looked into the allegations against Madam Gertrude Arba-Issah-Abattoir-Konu and recommended that per Article 146(9) she be relieved of her position because there had been established a prima facie case against her. We'll go into really the analysis of what happened and really moving forward, or from hindsight, what we saw. But I want us to watch this quick video on what transpired as regards the removal of the Chief Justice and why we're where we are.
In an unprecedented constitutional development, the head of Ghana's judiciary and Supreme Court was removed from office on September 1, 2025, the first in the Fourth Republican dispensation. But how did this all start? Well, in early 2025, 3 petitions were filed against Justice Tokonu by private citizens and concerned individuals alleging misconduct, including alleged misuse of public funds and other forms of misbehavior. Well, the first and most cited was by Daniel Ofori. For context, similar petitions were filed during the erstwhile government but were dismissed. Well, upon receiving the petitions, President John Dramani Mahama forwarded them to the Council of State, beginning the constitutional consultations under Article 146 of Ghana's 1992 Constitution, which governs removal of Superior Court justices, including the Chief Justice. Well, after consulting with the Council of State, it was determined that a prima facie case existed. Justice Tokonu was then suspended in April 2025, setting up a 5-member investigative committee to probe the allegations. Well, the committee examined the petition over several months and ultimately reported that grounds of stated misbehavior were established. Among the findings were alleged misuse of public funds, which involved CJ Tokonu allegedly authorizing travel expenditures, including holiday travels with her husband to Tanzania and daughter to USA, with per diems charged to the Judicial Service. And amongst others, claims of improper human resource decisions and procedural breaches involving staff transfers and recommendations. On the strength of the committee's findings, the President was constitutionally obliged to act and removed her under Article 1469 with immediate effect. The investigative committee, chaired by Justice Gabriel Scott Pwaman and including senior judges and legal experts, conducted in-camera hearings, meaning proceedings were held privately, and much evidence was not made public. The then CJ Tokonu and her legal team attended hearings but repeatedly complained about procedural issues, including denial of access to family during hearings, body searches, and confiscation of personal devices, which she described as degrading and unjust, as well as closed-door proceedings with limited transparency, raising concerns about fair process.
Unfortunately, every step of the removal process being undertaken against me is being done in a manner that breaks every rule on how justice is delivered in our country. And this is why I find the need to draw the nation's attention to the serious violations of the Constitution and law in the process, and the danger it holds for the development of the nation's democracy.
Now, after months of hearings, the committee finalized its report, finding her guilty of stated misbehavior and recommended removal.
Mr. President, without disclosing the substance of the proceedings, and since in-camera proceedings is not the same as in secret, we can state that in respect of the first petition, we received evidence by Mr. Daniel Ofori, the first petitioner, through 13 witnesses. Similarly, the Chief Justice in her defense called 12 witnesses, including expert witnesses, as she is entitled to do under the Constitution. Mr. President, after critical and dispassionate examination and assessment of all the evidence, including the expert evidence, against the provisions of the Constitution and the relevant laws, we have, without fear or favor, arrived at a recommendation on the first petition. The recommendation is contained in the envelope which I now give to you.
And because the Constitution mandates presidential action in line with the committee's recommendations, President Mahama signed her removal order on September 1, 2025. Throughout the process, Tokonu maintained her innocence and denial of wrongdoing. Earlier in the year, she responded to allegations of financial misconduct as unfortunate untruths and defended her actions as consistent with Judicial Service travel policy. She insisted on due process rights, demanding copies of the petitions and time to reply, arguing basic common law principles were being ignored. In June 2025, she filed for judicial review at the High Court, claiming the removal process under Article 146 was fundamentally flawed and lacked fair hearing. The application was dismissed on jurisdictional grounds. Subsequently, multiple interlocutory applications were filed to stop the removal process, which were dismissed by the Supreme Court. Tokunu also filed a human rights case at the ECOWAS Community Court of Justice, seeking $10 million in compensation for alleged moral and reputational harm, highlighting claims of violation of fair trial rights and her suspension and removal. Well, that was also dismissed. The removal ignited intense debate. Others fear the move is a flouting of judicial independence, creating a climate where judges may feel insecure in dispensing justice impartially.
The legal fraternity should challenge same, women should challenge same, and this is a call to action. A call to ask that John Mahama, please stop the removal of the Chief Justice. And just for the purposes of filling the judiciary with people that you think have your party affiliation or links. We demand immediately the reinstatement of the Chief Justice.
Legal experts and former judges criticize the opacity of proceedings, while some justify the constitutional process and accountability. In the end, Tokunu's case raises serious questions about separation of powers and judicial autonomy in Ghana. Judith Brown, TV3 News.
And of course, more detail as regards the removal of the Chief Justice. The first in Ghana's history that a sitting Chief Justice will be removed. But I'm joined in the studio now by my colleague, Joseph Akable, who's going to give us a bit more detail regarding what happened in Parliament. And then we'll go into or dive into the CJ bit as well that you heard my colleague and watched there in that short clip. Joe, you're welcome.
Thank you, Beatrice.
And I should say happy end of 2025 to you, first of all.
Well, yes, it's been a good year. Very interesting news here. And I agree with you that the removal of the Chief Justice was very significant in the national life. It's one of the news items that dominated multiple times. So it started off with all these rumors surrounding it. It eventually became a petition that was sent. Yeah. Then the whole nation had to wait for a while for the prima facie determination to be done. Once that stage was crossed, the committee started a hearing. It was just on and off. And for almost like...
And with her press conference, kind of, putting fuel in the fire, I should say.
I mean, eventually, we heard from the Chief Justice, the former Chief Justice now at the center of the entire controversy, speak publicly to that matter. And so that was a big news item that dominated the airwaves and one that we covered quite extensively. And I think Judith fantastically captures that one there. But in Parliament, there were also lots of issues that took place in Parliament now. And then the parliamentary context story, would have to look at it within the angle of what had played out in the previous Parliament. You recall that keenly contested election that took place that resulted in Alban Gbabin emerging victorious. It was the very first time that we saw what we had seen play out in a lot of other African countries that was very alien to Ghana. Our parliamentarians near fisticuffs, pushing, shoving each other. These are things that, trust me, you're either going to see it play out in NUC's elections. For those of you who are very familiar with student politics, you're going to see it play out in student elections. Even SRC elections, once in a while you see it here and there. But we had seen it play out in a lot of the other parliaments taking place. And so that very situation where an MP had to snatch a ballot paper and put it in his mouth, that was more or less a precursor to what was going to play out this particular year. Because that set the stage for many to think that, well, our parliament and how close it was tied at a point did not appear to have helped us a lot. We talked a lot about the hung parliament and how beneficial it will be or not. So that is the context within which you have to understand how this particular parliament played out. To the extent that now you had a party that won the election, had a significant majority in parliament, and the expectation of many was that it will have an easy control of the legislative body. But we saw violence play out over and over again.
I mean, a super majority, but the minority leader kept saying we are a small but a mighty minority.
A mighty minority, yes. But I mean, with that, once we had crossed that Rubicon, to put it that way, we just saw the violence play out again. And those are some significant steps that I'm going to show you right here. So I'm going to stick with the fact that, well, Alban Gbabin was re-elected as the Speaker of Parliament. You had Ahiafo and Isaac Amwakwe Isiama being elected as the deputies as well. Then a ministerial vetting that took place. That was what I was referring to as the chaotic scenes that we took place. But we went a step back just to make our viewers understand that because of how things had played out in the previous parliament, many thought that with the significant majority that was taking place this time around, we will not see that happening. But we saw it taking place. Chaotic scenes. We had the MPs pushing tables and chairs around, turning things around. It resulted in destruction of public property inside Parliament itself. Eventually, there was a probe that was supposed to take place. That probe, the findings came out. Some MPs were suspended. Others escaped sanctions because we all saw that it was a free-for-all brawl, basically being engaged in by the members of Parliament. We also saw what played out in terms of some of the fallouts from the previous election that took place. Blake Manort finally got a member of Parliament. The MP, Irabna Obin, was elected. And for those of you who may have forgotten about that Blake Manort situation, it was one of the constituencies that they basically could not conclude on the voting process before, at the time the president was being sworn in. It was one of those outstanding constituencies the EC had attempted to go through and carry out a collation that could not be done. A place where sheets were being stored was attacked and set ablaze. And so that became an outstanding constituency. Eventually, some form of closure had to be done, and they got a member of Parliament finally. So that was also a very significant political event that took place in relation to Parliament over there. And so we also can also talk about the death of Akwetia MP. Ernest Kumi also is one that also got a lot of us very concerned and very worried. Yeah. It resulted in a by-election that had to take place there. The NDC won the by-election and made the bold promises. A very interesting by-election that we covered. You recall the lawyer who was at the center of this whole dispute. Mind you, Akwetia was just one of those outstanding constituencies that also had issues post the 2024 elections. And so that also had to be settled. There were legal battles here and there, even before the swearing in and all of that taking place. Ernest Kumi was going over to the Supreme Court and all of those matters. There was a contempt application pending against him. All those are matters that were all going on in the court. But eventually we know that what happened was that the NDC managed to win the by-election that took place in that regard as well. And so those are some significant steps with regards to this particular one that took place there.
And Joe, I'll come back to you very briefly, but I want to go back to Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah, who is still via video call with us. Prof, you couldn't give us your preliminary thoughts earlier, but if you can tell us really, looking at all that happened in Parliament, your own view, and of course we went a little bit also into the removal of the Chief Justice as well.
Yes, thank you. And I apologize for my very poor voice quality.
It's all right.
I'm okay now. Yes, this past year, Parliament has been quite an exciting political arena for those who observe parliamentary work over the years. No wonder, you know, this extreme partisanship of our Parliament in terms of these two political parties was displayed in many, many ways. First of all, the overwhelming majority of the NDC parliamentarians has suggested that perhaps they will be able to kind of tame the vibrancy of the opposition. But as we saw through the past year, clearly that minor opposition, or what people call micro-opposition, minority, I think they did themselves some good by being able to stand up and raising the relevant issues, even though at times, in my humble opinion, some of the issues they raise and try to pursue and not substantive enough. Nonetheless, they did their work as a minority in the legislature. I think also that the Speaker did very well in many ways by controlling a very, at times, chaotic Parliament. As my colleague just said, at some point, people were trying to behave like the parliamentarians of Taiwan and other places where they threw desks at each other and all. And I was very surprised and a bit ashamed that our parliamentarians could go that low in breaking tables and shoving themselves. That was not really something that I think our young people know. But we also know that overall in Parliament, at times, these passions are high, and I'm not surprised it happened in our case. I think overall, they did pretty well in terms of passing certain very important legislations. The budget presentation, for instance, was nicely received, and I think the ruling party has shown in many ways the ability to control events, politically speaking, and their ability to assert themselves. So overall, I don't have anything to add to what my good friend.
Okay, you're saying that Parliament did very well, yet there are those who feel that there was not strong punitive, action taken against those who, as it were, misbehaved. The February chaos, where a number of public property were destroyed. Even the one that happened beginning of this month, over the Kandai election rerun, the decision of the Tamale High Court to declare that. People think that if there had been punishment for those who misbehaved, quote unquote, earlier, we wouldn't have seen all these instances. How do you interpret that?
Yes. Yes, I said they did well in the context of the ability to pass on very important legislations. But in terms of behavior or misbehavior, as you are referring to, that was not impressive. And I did make a point that they did not present a real good model to young people who look at parliamentarians as mentors and people they can learn from. Because certainly, you see, Parliament is almost like any of these so-called professional institutions that seldom punish or sanction their members. The legal fraternity, the medical fraternity or not. Parliament has become like that. So I wasn't too surprised that the Speaker was not very strong in sanctioning the bad behavior displayed by some of the members of Parliament. So certainly I do agree that there were several occasions of disorder, chaos in the Parliament. But by and large, I think the Speaker was tolerant enough to allow certain things to happen before controlling them. I guess because he felt that he should moderate his interventions. He is known to be an NDC member, and therefore is not neutral in these matters. Yet, I think he was able to play his role effectively to control the outbreak of chaos.
Prof, in terms of the Chief Justice, let me ask you very briefly before I go to Dr. Doke. From hindsight, would you say that indeed we followed Article 146 as spelled out by the Constitution without any, political interference like the critics and the NPP said or claimed? In like 1 minute, Prof.
I have said many times publicly that you cannot follow the process. The President and those who all the stakeholders in this process, they followed what the Constitution says. So you have a problem, you have to attack the constitutional process that is laid for doing that. But I've also said that first of all, the gravity of the offenses labeled against the Chief Justice for her dismissal for me was not weighty enough. Thirdly, I've also said that the President could have used his discretion in stopping the process, because you know what? In a democracy, these three key institutions are supposed to be independent, theoretically at least. But in Ghana, it seems to me that the judiciary is subjugated to the other two. Who has ever questioned the travels of the Speaker of Parliament? Who has ever traveled the travels of the President? So why do we get someone to question the travel of the Chief Justice, especially when he followed a policy laid by the Judicial Council? But now I hear that policy should have been approved by the executive. Then you ask yourself, in fact, if these three arms of government are independent, why should the other one approve the policy, internal policy made by the Judicial Council? Who has ever questioned the travel policy of the Speaker of Parliament? So for me, it still comes to the point that the judiciary has been subjugated in this triangular relationship that we call checks and balances in our government.
Separation of powers, you say. Thank you very much, Professor Bafo Agyeman-Duah, governance expert, for sharing your views with us on both Parliament and, of course, that historic removal of the Chief Justice Gertrude Araba Isaba-Torkornoo. When we come back, we'll go into a bit of security, the illegal mining issues, and really how the year 2025 was as regards these issues and what we need to look forward to in 2026. Do stay with us. This year also, there were a number of issues on the health front, from mpox to other issues that really got the attention of those who work in the area of health. Watch this.
Health fears resurfaced early in the year as mpox outbreaks in parts of the sub-region placed Ghana's health system on high alert. Surveillance was heightened, public health education intensified, and border monitoring reinforced.
Over 10,000 cases of typhoid fever were reported in the Oti region, while over 100 suspected cases of meningitis resulting in 16 deaths were also reported in the Upper West region.
These disease outbreaks reopened critical discussions about Ghana's epidemic preparedness, laboratory capacity, and the effectiveness of risk communication.
There are some districts that used to have relatively high number of cases, but it's gone down. And there are some districts that have come up. So that brings to bear that we don't need to underrate mpox.
Drug abuse, particularly among the youth, emerged as a major public health concern in 2025. The rise of synthetic drugs, often referred to in public discourse as red, shifted the conversation from social concern to national alarm.
That 5-10 minutes of getting high could be the end of your life. And so don't get high, rather work hard to contribute meaningfully to the development of Ghana.
The controversies surrounding Ghana's Health Information System Management Contract was also topical.
The disputes revolved around the Ministry of Health's decision to switch from the Lightwave Health Information Management System to the Ghana Health Information Management System. Critics, however, questioned the lack of transparency and accountability in the contract switch, demanding an audit report to justify the transition. The Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association went on strike due to the government's delay in implementing the 2024 collective agreement, which promised improved allowances, incentives, and working conditions. The government cited budget constraints, stating that implementing the agreement would disrupt the 2025 national budget, and proposed deferring implementation to 2026, which the GRNMA rejected.
At this point in time, we must save ourselves in terms of getting what is due us financially.
In 2025 also, the country experienced a concerning rise in HIV cases, with over 334,700 people currently living with the virus. In 2024, there were 15,200 new infections and 12,608 related deaths.
The condom use is low, particularly among the youth. People now fear pregnancy more than HIV/AIDS.
Health workers refusing to report to post is another pressing issue in Ghana, with many newly posted medical officers failing to show up at their assigned regions. As of November 2025, only 34% of 463 posted doctors had reported, leaving 7 out of 10 without a doctor in some areas. The Upper West region is particularly affected, with 25 out of 32 allocated medical doctors refusing their postings.
We will give them additional 1 week to appeal to them, to report to their various facilities where they have been posted, after which we will do what we call validation.
Institutional trust in Ghana's health system was further tested by the Rich Hospital and the Ralph issue.
Counter-allegations and official responses placed one of Ghana's most prominent referral hospital under intense public scrutiny. For many observers, the issue went beyond a single case. It raised broader questions about patient safety, professional ethics, internal accountability, and how health institutions respond to crisis in the age of instant information and social media pressure.
My colleague Sarah Apenko filed that report. Well, 2025 also saw the closure of a number of health facilities, and I'm joined in the studio by Dr. Winfred Bah, who is the acting registrar of HEFRA. Doc, happy end of 2025, I should say.
Sure. I think that we've had a good 2025 when it comes to the health sector, and we've been all working hard to make sure that we build a health system that is resilient, that is ready to provide quality and safe care. And I think our minister has championed a lot of that, and we've also worked hard to make sure that vision comes to reality.
And I was saying earlier that this year also saw the closure of so many health facilities across the country. Curtis at the time felt, okay, if you're closing them for being quacks or not having license or regulatory issues, is it that you are sleeping all along until now?
That's the question I always get asked. But I think that this is the time to do it. And you should know we have a new government that is interested in resetting. And we are also resetting the health sector. And so these are some of the things we have to do so that when you walk to a health sector, you have confidence and trust that at least the right thing will be done and you will not be harmed. So it's just that we want to do the right thing now.
How many, if you recall, in terms of numbers, were you able to close down?
So we closed down.
If you can tell us the specific.
So we closed down 114
okay.
Facilities countrywide, not all the regions. We will continue from January.
Okay.
Most of them didn't have a license. Some of them too had expired licenses. And there were some that were quacks. The people who were practicing were not qualified to even practice there. And that doesn't make it safe. Because you go there, when you have a quack, they can give you the wrong medication and you can lose your life. And your life is only one. And so it's important that we do this. And there was one that we did. We closed them down, gave them recommendations. They did it today. Everybody is happy. Even the workers, they are happy because the place is looking very new, very fresh, new beds. The environment is nice. When you walk into it, you feel happy yourself.
You said that you decided to do it because this government is resetting the country, as it were. But aside from that, what prompted you to go into these specific places?
Yes, because when we took over this year, we do what we call monitoring of the facility, and we saw that some of them were not fit for purpose. And that will make sure that people's lives are at stake. So we decided that we have to do the right thing. And we had the support of everyone. I know previously they wanted to do some of them, but then some big man will call you, oh no, this one is my friend. But right now, everybody understands that. It's like they say, if you do good, you do it for yourself. Anybody can be caught as a patient at any time. And so this government said, we will give you the support, do the right thing for all of us.
Yeah. Now, aside from the closures, there was also that scare of mpox. How would you say the country was able to manage it? Did we do that in time to ensure that everybody was okay?
Yes, so I'm sure you heard about mpox, but after some time, I don't think you've heard about it again. This country, the health system has made it very possible to have a very good public health response system. We have about 36 sentinel sites now. Anytime there's an outbreak, we have people from every part of the region trained to manage them. And you can see most of the outbreaks like mpox, cholera and things, we've been able to take care of them.
Dr. Winfred Bah, Acting Registrar HEFRA, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
On the 2025 year in review. Let's move very quickly into security now and the issues that dominated conversations. We're joined via video call by Dr. Victor Doke. He's a lecturer at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center, Faculty of Academic Affairs. Good evening to you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on 2025 year in review.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let me get your general assessment of the year 2025 in terms of crime, even violence related to the elections and the by-elections that we had from the beginning into the middle of the year.
Well, I think with regards to the elections, first of all, the trend has been that post-election violence has become something of a worry. It's becoming a norm with the aspect of coalitions and then announcement of results, amassing up at coalition centers and whatnot. So I think this issue has to be looked at by the authorities, like election management bodies and the security forces at large. The aspect of crime itself, crime varies. And you talk about crime that involves the use of weapons, which has surged over the months in 2025. And the report themselves by the IGP and the Nigerian minister, crime related to the use of illegal weapons, about 600 plus and whatnot, which is very worrying. Now, there are a lot of things we need to do with regards to, curbing the aspect of influence of illegal weapons in the system. And that is what we need to focus on going into 2026. But generally, I think the proactiveness of the security services has been upped. It's work in progress. There is more to be done in that area with regards to training and capacity building and responding to emergencies, and then how quickly they respond to issues about crime and all of that. Because when you see the trend lately, I think the last quarter of this year, what I see is the proactiveness and promptness of the Ghana Police Service and other security agencies responding to issues. For example, yesterday I saw a video with one gentleman brandishing a weapon at a festival, and just some fear was associated by the police. So these are some of the proactiveness of the service that we need to see more in 2026. Collaboration in that area is also needed with other sister agencies. One agency cannot do it alone. We know how the aspect of logistics, equipment, and resources has been hindering the success of operations and all of that. I think 2026, the central government needs to push in more resources with regards to fighting crimes for our security services to be very apt. Technology, inclusion in fighting crime is very, very necessary, because when you look at the cyber crime which has surged lately, is very worrying. And that also connects to how we man our borders and then allow foreign nationals into the country, how we look at the aspect of overstaying, and all of these things need to be looked at holistically, because other than that, then our figures will quadruple coming 2026, which will be a very, very, very tough situation for us to find solutions to if we are not able to put in measures as soon as possible.
Really, an additional information as regards what happened in 2025 in the area of security. And then I'll come back to you, Doc. Don't go away.
Free general election held the previous year. After the swearing in into office of President John Dramani Mahama on January 7, the then Inspector General of Police, Dr. George Ekufu Dampare, was tasked to commission investigations into election-related violence during the 2020 and 2024 polls, incidents that led to the loss of 8 lives. However, the report was not submitted by the deadline set for its presentation. On March 13, 2025, the presidency announced the dismissal of Dr. Dampare. On the same day, the Deputy IGP, Christian Tete Yohunu, was elevated by President Mahama to the highest rank in the police service.
The new Inspector General of Police. Yes, the people's choice. Congratulations.
The changes were effected in accordance with Articles 91 and 202 of the 1992 Constitution, in consultation with the Council of State. As he settled into his new role, Inspector General of Police, Christian Tete Yohunu, initiated the restructuring of the service. In April, when tensions resurfaced in Boku between feuding factions, the IGP personally led a contingent of police officers, supported by the military, to the conflict zone to engage traditional authorities.
I will appeal to you to talk to the youth that hope is not lost. We are ready to assist them. And so they should put down their arms and be ready to cooperate with us, so that together we'll bring peace and everlasting peace to Boku.
Ghana recorded 628 robbery incidents and 340 murder cases as of July this year. Interior Minister Muntaka Mohamed Mubarak disclosed this at a press conference on November 18, 2025. In the same period in 2024, 1,219 robbery cases and 552 murder cases were booked. The Criminal Investigations Department of the Ghana Police Service also launched investigations into a reported murder at the Tuba Netlink estate near Kasoa.
Investigations established that the suspect, Samuel Amwa, also known as Biggie, had been living with the victims and was in a relationship with Alberta Hagan, and their relationship had recently deteriorated due to a dispute over financial matters. In a fit of rage, the suspect attacked Alberta and the two children who witnessed the incident. The suspect fled the scene and went into hiding, but after months of sustained intelligence operations, he was arrested on 17 September 2025 at Suhum in the Eastern Region.
Director General of the CID, COP Lydia Yakudonko, while addressing the media, also spoke about a rescue operation involving 60 victims of human trafficking, 41 foreigners rescued in Ghana, and 19 Ghanaians rescued abroad. The year also witnessed the recovery of stolen vehicles shipped into Ghana by a coordinated transnational vehicle theft syndicate. 10 vehicles, comprising 8 Toyota saloon cars and 2 RAV4s, stolen from the Netherlands, were impounded and are being repatriated to their country of origin. What should have been a joyous traditional festival quickly turned violent at Omanjo, Gwiniwuhu, when supporters of two rival chiefs clashed during the sprinkling of the native food, pokpoi. Attempts to stop one of the chiefs from performing the ritual failed, triggering chaos. Stones were pelted, resulting in a free-for-all fight. In the end, sporadic gunshots claimed the lives of 4 people. Police swiftly intervened to restore calm. Around the same period, 2 persons were killed during another Homowa celebration in Teshin, following similar clashes. The police were highly visible and actively involved during the Ablekuma North election rerun across 19 polling stations. On that fateful day, a gang of thugs invaded the Odoko Methodist Church polling station, breaching a human wall formed by police officers and causing chaos. The target was the former member of parliament for Ewutu Senya East, Mavis Hawakumsen. She was physically assaulted. Others who were with the former legislator at the time were not spared, even as they attempted to flee the polling station. It was an election marked by fear and terror. Subsequently, 8 of the thugs identified were arrested and prosecuted by the police.
Let me say that we condemn this in no uncertain terms. I mean, that's, for me, it's a scar on all of us conscience that as people having practiced democracy for over 3 decades, we cannot simply just go and have election and it will be violent free.
Drawing lessons from the Ablekuma North election rerun, the Police Management Board re-strategized ahead of the Akwetia by-election. As a result, 5,000 police officers were deployed to Akwetia, making it the highest security deployment in a single constituency by-election in the country. Ahead of the polls, the officers underwent intensive training at the Police High Risk Operations Training Center at Huhunya in the Eastern Region. The training covered precision shooting, rappelling, and crowd control operations. For the first time, the IGP also introduced the Black Maria in election duties. In the end, the exercise was deemed a success.
Stanley Niblo filed that report for us, giving us a wrap of what happened on the security front in the year 2025. I still do have a video call with us, Dr. Victor Doke. Doc, I want to concentrate on the operations of the police administration this year of 2025. How would you rate it?
Well, rating it over 10 or 100%, it depends on the evaluation that one does with regards to set targets and objectives set by the police department. And if anything is to go by, I think they are on course. I wouldn't want to put a figure to it, but I think the IGP coming into office with his ideas, closely collaborating and coordinating with his management board and other sister agencies are doing well. The aspect of establishing this task force to, deal with galamsey issues and then also crime. We've seen what the task force is doing up north, and then subsequently replicated in the other regions. So the aspect of decentralizing information sharing, which the fourth estate has, had, previous years been hammering on, this has also changed by time. So we get to, receive first-hand information as to what happens in other regions, unlike before. For him also coming out with regards to, being transparent, trying to be accountable to the people of Ghana with his actions is very key when you talk about the security sector actors. And then holistically, let's look at the issue when it came to the report and how he was able to put up the, election violence report as he was tasked to within the shortest possible time for the recommendations to be, implemented by the president. So I think putting all these together, the IGP, and that is what, warranted for his extension by the police council, which was recommended. So holistically for himself and then his team and then the service, they are on course, but there is more work to be done in the cybersecurity aspect because we are having issues in that area.
Indeed. And again, this year, and that's my last question to you, we saw a number of deaths, unfortunately, just in the area of illegal mining, starting from January, where about 7 people died on an Anglo Gold concession, and then that unfortunate, Ghanaians call it Black Wednesday, when we had 8 prominent members of the country in government, including the Defense Minister, Dr. Edward Omane-Boamah, dying in a military helicopter crash. Also on their way towards, a program to deal with illegal mining issue. Looking at all the things that we have seen in this area, and of course there was the launch of NIMOS in July. Would you say that we are on course when it comes to the fight against illegal mining, security-wise?
Yeah, Beatrice, thank you. So you mentioned all this, but you forgot to mention about the attack on the NIMOS director himself, at some point in time. So when you put all these things together, yes, you are able to do something on course to stop, an action or to deal with, a threat, which if not dealt with, consequential. Now, what are some of the approaches, the new approaches that can be, inculcated in this fight going forward? We need to look at the aspect of what area support, more investment in that area, buy helis, unmanned vehicles, drones, especially in that area, for surveillance purposes and all of that, to help the ground troops. Because our approach has been one way, focusing onward transportation of troops getting to the areas. Now it's yielding some, results, unlike the past, we can see, but there is more what needed to be done. We need, the logistics, the resources are there. So this is an area where the government needs to push in more resources. And we are talking about foreign nationals coming into this area, which is very key. And it links to armed elements, okay? We're talking about the drug use. We're talking about the illicit flow of arms in all these areas, which is very key. So there's a lot of issues in this illegal mining itself. So I think going forward in 2026, we need a holistic approach. If the government wants to sit down, have a stakeholder consultation with CSOs, which is very key in the fight against illegal mining, which the government has already done, but there needs to be more consultation in that area, okay, to look at the new approaches, new ways of doing things, unlike the old ways, that we can say we will be very, very proactive and then productive, successful in the fight against illegal mining in 2026. Other than that, then it means all these things will now be linked to, crime, which research and then be a very difficult situation for us to deal with. So I think in 2026, we need to look at all these emerging threats from cybersecurity, illicit flows of arms, drug use, or whatnot. And I foresee that if these are not dealt with, then it means we have the president would have to reshuffle the security heads so they can tackle these issues head on.
Thank you very much, Dr. Victor Doke, for joining us and sharing your thoughts with us. Victor Doke there, he's a lecturer at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center at the Faculty of Academic Affairs. Well, thank you. Right now, the Alfred Okanse is here. Hi, Alfred.
Hello, Beatrice.
Happy end of 2025.
Happy end of 2025.
Yeah.
It's been an eventful year, is it not?
It has been, yes. Not an election year, but still a lot of activities, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of unprecedented events happened.
Yeah.
Some of which you have touched on in the conversation with Dr. Doke. It also shapes the future in the days ahead of us.
Yeah.
In the judiciary, and then also in security, fight against galamsey, and so on. The last point that you made about these gallant Ghanaians that we talk about who lost their lives in the line of duty, by the way, we have done a lot to remember what they have contributed to the nation, but their death also must make meaning a bit more than just the investigations and the investigations that we have done. The fight against corruption is on. The best memory we can give to them and their lives is to win this fight, at least, because that's why they died.
Yeah.
Is it not? So,
yeah, but it's interesting. One of the things you'll be going into will be the economy.
Absolutely.
The fact that at the beginning of the year we had the cedi against the dollar around 10 cedis, and now it's kind of dropped to the same 10 cedis.
Yeah, it's
coming
about
to
11
the end.
cedi, 25 pesos now. I mean, during this period, we've seen the cyclical nature of the cedi appreciation, depreciation, right from January to now. Normally, if you look at over the years, around this time, you would see the depreciation of the cedi. Why? Because companies are repatriating their profits, and then you have traders who are importing as well. So there's a lot of money that's going out, okay? But we've seen the reverse happening now quite as a result of a number of elements, including what we've seen the Bank of Ghana pumping in a lot of dollars into the system. As to the sustainability of that particular policy is one that has been a subject of conversation for a lot of economists. We've seen what's happened as well with the conversation about what the IMF is saying. In fact, if you look at the IMF Fifth Review report, it is in there. They want the Bank of Ghana to continuously and gradually reduce its footprints in the forex market. What that means is that going forward into 2026, we may not see these volumes of intervention from the central bank in terms of shoring up the value of the cedi with a lot more dollars in the system. So there's a lot that we're looking to going forward, right? And Beatrice, appreciate you as always, and holding it up until now. Beatrice Edu there. There's more on 3news.com. This review that we're doing, there's a text of it that you'll find as well with a number of stories that we churn out on 3news.com. But we're live as well on 3FM 92.7, also on TV3 Ghana on Facebook and on DSTV channel 279. We're all across the world on 3news.com and as well on 3 News on YouTube. And this is the year in review as we continue through till 11 p.m. tonight, and so that's not the Ghana tonight as you know it. But since 1992, 2025 will be one that has had its own fair share of events and the milestones that we would refer to, some unprecedented events. For the first time, a sitting defense minister alongside other senior state officials and security personnel lost their lives in the military helicopter crash while on national assignment, as the nation was still grieving. Another tragedy struck when 6 prospective military recruits died in a recruitment stampede. As the year draws to a close, questions linger. But have lessons been learned? The Ghana Armed Forces have put measures in place to assure and then also to bring that confidence back in the process, that going forward, the measures that the Ghana Armed Forces have put in place will ensure this doesn't happen. We heard the Chief of Defense Staff make that clear promise. But Joseph Armstrong has been telling the story about how things have played out over the period. We'll tell you about it as we go on. But let's look at the key individuals that we lost within the year. Quite unfortunate, but this is it. May their souls continue to rest in perfect peace as we continue to reflect on the impact, the contribution that these individuals that we just showed you have made to the development of this country in many ways. My name is Alfred Okanse. We continue the review of the year 2025, the highs, the lows, and how the next 12 months ahead of us, 2026, will look like going forward. We've touched on quite a number of things, but we'll consolidate it in the last hour of this year in review conversation. And we're live on 3FM 92.7, and Joseph Akable is here with me. We're going to run through what we touched on previously, but a bit more into detail because Martin Pibble is private legal practitioner, is going to be joining us in a bit. But the removal of the Chief Justice, Gertrude Araba Isaba Saki Tokono, was a big highlight in the year because we spent quite a number of months talking about it. And eventually, her removal that played out. But then again, Joseph, it's one that shapes the kind of judiciary that we're going to have in the years ahead, taking into consideration what the Constitutional Review Committee's own recommendations are in this report. One question that we have been asking, looking into the details of the recommendation, is whether or not the recommendation will cure some of the issues and concerns that private legal practitioners had with Article 146, specific to, for instance, what the clear definition of stated misbehavior is, and whether or not that process itself serves the element of justice in its entirety. One of your take on this quickly.
I mean, I think those are very interesting and pertinent questions that you pose. And my direct answer will be that we'll have to wait and see. Because mind you, over the period, we've had certain changes to the removal process by way of judicial interpretation. We know that the courts have pronounced on various constitutional provisions, and that has guided the process so far. We know that when the framers of the Constitution put out the text of the Constitution, for instance, there was no requirement for a prima facie determination in there. But by way of the judicial intervention, when the matter went to the Supreme Court, the court said that, well, we do prima facie determination for the other Superior Court judges. Why that is in the case of the Chief Justice, it has to just go straight off and have a committee set up without a prima facie determination being done. And so that was a way by which we got it tested. What we have seen over the period is that, unfortunately, and it's one of the issues that I'm sure we may put to Martin Pibble when we engage him, unfortunately, the substantive cases that were filed by the Chief Justice herself, multiple cases, some at the High Court, some at the Supreme Court. There was one that was filed by the Member of Parliament, Asifua, also pending. All those matters have not been determined. What were determined by the courts were the interlocutory applications, mainly injunction applications to halt the process or a judicial review by way of certiorari asking the court to quash the matter that has been put out there. So that is what it remains outstanding, and so that is matters that have not been dealt with extensively, and that means that we do not have a judicial pronouncement on some of these matters, and that I thought would be crucial to enabling the Constitutional Review Committee in doing its work to incorporate some of these matters into the work that is put out there. I have seen the recommendations that they've put out there, the suggestions. Yes, they try to limit the involvement of the executive by way of the president, try to involve parliament in one way or the other, but the question still remains whether that significantly assures us of all of a transparent process or not. I would say that we'll still have to wait through implementation and see how all of that will play out. And so just like any constitutional instrument, it's when it comes into play. Because mind you, this is the first time under the Fourth Republic that we've successfully, I don't know whether successful is the right word, that we've gone through the entire removal process for a Chief Justice from the start to the end.
Well, let's engage Martin Kpebu, is private legal practitioner. Counsel, good evening. Thank you for joining us. This is one that we spend quite a lot of time talking about, the entire process of the removal of the Chief Justice, right from the beginning, when petitions were acknowledged, received, and communicated by the presidency through that statement signed by the minister in charge of communications of the president, Felix Kwatshofo. So we all got to know how many petitions had been submitted and then what the process was going to be until the final moment when the communication as well was put out about her removal. General impressions regarding this entire process as it played out earlier in the year?
By and large, the process was fair, all right? Because if you look at it, it basically ensured that at the end of the day, the infractions that specifically saying that the unconstitutional or let's say unlawful spending of the monies involved, okay, was detected, and then the process is gone through, and the Chief Justice found liable, breaching the law. That one, there's no mistake at all about it. The process was clear, very transparent. It helped. I have only just one comment about it that didn't meet the legal threshold, and for which subsequently, and I've mentioned this before, we must amend the law to make it clearer, which is that when the president made a prima facie determination, remember, based on the J2 and Attorney General, the Supreme Court held that it is the president's prerogative to do the prima facie case. That's to determine whether there's something worth answering. That's in the petition, right? And it's the Council of State that will advise the president, but ultimately it's the president's call. He has to give his ruling. So in this particular case, President Mahama didn't give a detailed ruling, reasons. So we expected reasons, because the Supreme Court had long held in one of the Chachuchikata cases in 2003, 2004 Supreme Court of Ghana law reports that when you're giving prima facie ruling, give reasons, because if you don't give reasons why you think there's a prima facie or why you think there's no prima facie, it opens the door for people to think you are biased, you are thoughtless, you are malicious. So I expected that more than 20 years on, when we are doing a prima facie determination, we should give detailed reasons. That's the only thing that was not good. And also there was a small thing about Tokonu complaining that she was not allowed to enter with a relation or two. That one too, we felt, and I also agree, that generally a person going through Article 146 proceedings should be allowed to enter with a relation or two. Yes, two is good. One on the left, one on the right, or one sitting in front, one sitting at the back. It helps. So that much, these are the two comments. But let's be clear that the Supreme Court held in the Chachuchikata case that if you didn't give the detailed reasons, it doesn't make the process null and void. But it's not good that more than 20 years on, we still made that mistake by not giving reasons. And then not too distant past, when Akufo-Addo, just before he left office about a year ago, when he did the prima facie ruling on the petition Professor Kweku Asare, that's popularly called Azar, presented, Akufo-Addo came out with a detailed ruling on the prima facie. And then later on, lawyer Okujeto came out and said he was the one who wrote it for Akufo-Addo to sign. So, so I had earlier on mentioned that it would have been ideal if President Mahama had given the duty to any other independent good lawyer to write it for him to sign.
I see. So that the detailed prima facie is one that you still are expecting that it would be put out. It's one that as well we would continue to keep the focus on in the coming months ahead of us. But then Joseph Akable referenced some of the cases that have not been determined as yet. The ECOWAS court case, for instance, and others that are still in motion or are active cases, even though the Chief Justice or the former Chief Justice has been removed. Is it a concern as well that you share to the extent that these cases have not been resolved, but yet the Chief Justice or the former Chief Justice has been removed?
Yes, to the extent that the substantive constitutional cases have not been dealt with, you are right. Yes, but when it comes to the petitions, because the Ofori one, the Daniel Ofori one has succeeded, and that's Chief Justice Tokono is out, it appears the theory that the rest of the petitions are moot would hold sway because the first one succeeded, and so she's out of office. So what would the second and the third ones achieve? I hope I'm not sounding rude. What I mean is that, so I'm asking, meaning that it appears that we can't achieve much with the second and third petitions. That's how come they would appear to be moot. When we say moot in law, we simply mean that, there's no need to decide this because something has already happened that makes the answering of these second and third petitions or the investigations of the second and third petitions unnecessary. That's what brings about that mootness. So it will.
I see. And Justice Abdullah is also joining us right now on Zoom. He's a private legal practitioner and also a lecturer at the UPSC Law Faculty. Justice Abdullah, good evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Alfred, and good evening to my neighbor.
All right. What's that one big takeaway that you would reference in this entire process of the removal of the Chief Justice and how that would also shape our jurisprudence going forward?
Well, I think that removing the precedent from the entire removal process appears to be a good thing, but unfortunately, it didn't really do much to make it a watertight system. Needless to point out that indeed we can never have a watertight removal process. If you like, the only circumstance under which you can have a watertight system would be to have a blank check that under no circumstances can the Chief Justice be removed unless he resigns, or dies, or retires at a specified age. If you want to have a completely independent and insulated system, that would be the only way out. But you can never have any system like that because you would want to have a balance of a system where a CJ, an unwanted CJ can be removed, or a CJ who go foul of the law can be removed, and at the same time also, more or less having a balance of a flexible and yet a rigid system where abuses can be curtailed and at the same time infractions can be dealt with. That's the kind of system we would like to have. And so, but unfortunately, it's needless to point out that what we have presently is not good at all. And what has been recommended by the committee, it only takes away the president from the system, but doesn't really deal, very well with the issues by giving us the kind of solutions that we can confidently say that it's a balance of the two. Because what the committee proposes appears to have a semblance of the president still having a remote influence in the entire removal process by simply saying that, okay, the president is not involved, but give it to the Council of State. But we all understand that the Council of State is just an offshoot of the president, which is why a lot of calls for its complete removal were made, in fact, over the years have been made by observers and constitutional, theorists, that the Council of State is not serving any useful purpose. And so reshaping the Council of State and still having the Council of State being an offshoot of the president does not serve to deal directly with the issues, because the president will still have influence within the Council of State. So long as that direct or indirect influence of the president in relation to the Council of State remains, there is no way we would ever have a completely insulated system of the removal of the CJ.
To the extent that even with now the proposal is not to have a 5-member committee, there's some sort of a tribunal that the Constitutional Review Committee is recommending. The president has just one representative or one person he
And then you can juxtapose that with what we are having now. Presently, the Council of State has decides who becomes its president, right? Nobody has an influence on how, nobody directly intervenes in who becomes the president. But it is the president's choice, or whoever the president blesses, that ultimately becomes the chair of the Council of State. One president is not a member of the Council of State. He's not a member of the Council of State. He doesn't have any role to play in the Council of State. Yet, whoever the president prefers is who becomes the chair or the head of the Council of State. So now that gives you an idea of how the new tribunal works. The president may not necessarily have to appoint all the members, but because of the overbearing influence of the president, chances are that their decisions will be in line with whatever the president wishes. And that is what I'm saying. That is what I would say that will not serve that useful purpose of having a balance of a removal process that is both watertight and at the same time flexible enough to allow for a removal where the need arises.
Kindly stay with me, Justice Abdullahi. Let me also bring in Edem Senano, who is a co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. Mr. Senano, good evening. Thank you for joining us here on the Year in Review.
Great. Good evening, and thank you for having me.
Perfect. Now, Lawyer Martin Kpebu is still with us. Your introduction then gets us to segue into the conversation of oral fight against corruption, the OSP matters arising. Now, Lawyer Martin Kpebu, I'll start off with you. You were a member of the Operation Recover All Loot Preparatory Team, ORAL. ORAL making progress, you would say. If you recall, the likes of Dr. Joshua Zato a few weeks ago said ORAL, he doesn't see much of an impact of what ORAL has done and recovered over the period. What's your verdict?
ORAL, as Operation Recover All Loot, is definitely headed in the right direction. There are a number of the cases that have made their way to court in record time. You see the National Service case, you see the SkyTrain case, and also even Edu Buahi's case, which was the first case the Attorney General presented to court. Even though that one is not from the whole of the ORAL committee, it came from Raymond Archer, the current Executive Secretary of IOCO. He was part of ORAL. And maybe there are two other cases. The buffer stock case. Yes, buffer stock case. Yes, the Abdul Hanan Aludiba and his wife, their case, and all those ones. So you see that once these cases have made their way to court, and even before the final judgment, look at the education, the naming and shaming it has brought, and also the assets that have been frozen. You see the Hanan case, nobody says guilty, but we are discussing it as citizens. We are allowed to discuss, but we are not pronouncing guilt. You see how money left, okay, buffer stock, went to the Northern Regional Manager, okay, and no work was done, yet the Northern Regional Manager's company was paid. Look at the houses Abdel Hanan and Udiba bought. They don't match his income, etc. Look at the Dubuahin case. Look at the many properties, about 27 properties or so in the Mayfair estate. All those things, they have been frozen. So you see that the message is already gone clearly ahead that you can't take public funds and spend anyhow. So that message is already sunk in even before the verdict the court will give. Look, and touch wood, even in the unlikely event that we're to lose some of these cases, we'll not lose the lesson. What is very clear to citizens is that so far, these persons we've said, they have not shown any businesses they did that warranted or merited that money they were holding. So yes, sometimes technical things can happen in court and you can lose a case, etc. But it doesn't mean the person is really innocent. We use a certain set of rules, but we all know that based on the real facts, the person too, that's the accused person, cannot explain the source of that wealth, etc. So for me, so far from the stories we've heard, you've not seen any of them being able to show that, no, these properties you've frozen, I rather got them through my private business. There's none of the accused persons who has been able to show that he was doing private work that generated that money. No. So far, it shows that it's government money and it's not their income. So a loss in the court doesn't mean that such persons didn't do anything wrong. It just may mean that maybe they didn't commit the offense, but it doesn't mean that they didn't misuse public funds. The two are different. As for misusing public funds, so far that is very clear. But as to whether it is a criminal offense, we will leave that for the court.
Well, Mr. Anu, from the citizen's perspective, taking off from what Matipebo ended, if indeed it's established that persons misapplied state funds, but yet the courts don't convict them, in the eyes of the public, the citizens whom you represent as a coalition against corruption, that will be a campaign lost, is it not?
Yes and no. There clearly will be an undermining of the confidence of citizens. Yet, I am of the view, similar to Martin in this instance, that the Operation Recover or Loot was a very important feature. And I have said that looking at the data we had from Afrobarometer, where we had about 30% of citizens saying that they would not report corruption for two reasons. One, they didn't expect that anything will really happen after it. And two, that there will be some kind of retaliation. This particular mechanism allowed citizens to be much more confident, brought out the information. In my view, it is something that should even be institutionalized. So if, assuming in the tenure of a particular government, none of our institutions is firm enough to investigate and find people culpable and therefore sanction them, one can expect that every 4 to 8 years, once there's a change of government, there is going to be this operation, and whatever things have been hidden will come out. So on one hand, one can say that there seems to be some kind of a lull, slowing down in the prosecution of the case. And obviously, there are many cases that were identified. We need to be a lot more innovative. I have said, listen, even if we need to bring on board private legal firms to do some of the investigations, the prosecution, if we need to have many more specialized anti-corruption courts, and that we can learn from East Africa. Kenya has done that. There are things we need to be doing in terms of the framework to make sure that the work that was done by Oral can be leveraged and we can get good results out of it.
I see. And Justice Abdullahi, your take on Oral, what will be your verdict? That will be some 10 months on, after the preparatory team did their work, submitted their report, and then the Attorney General prosecuting cases, some of which were not even captured in the OR report.
So this is actually the point I was about making, that I think that perhaps what the ORA team that my good friend Martin is a member of, or was a member of, should be doing is to be educating the public on the cases that emanate from ORA that are presently being prosecuted, or those that are still undergoing investigations and other things. I think that public information will be very crucial in buying the acceptance of the general public, because at this point, nobody really knows what ORA brought to this entire discourse of fight against corruption, because people actually think that ORA was just a fiasco. And so until proper education is made in that light, there's no way anybody can connect the dots and see that the cases that are presently in court or those that are being investigated are cases that ORA discovered or uncovered, and for which reason prosecution or recoveries are ongoing. This will be crucial to, if you like, douse the sentiment of the general public, because people are ridiculing ORA, people are making all kinds of comments, negative, adverse comments about ORA, because they probably do not have the information. And I, for once, do not have this information that Martin just put out. I didn't know that some of the cases emanated from ORA. And so it will be important that these facts are put out there so that we can see the relevance or otherwise of ORA, because it will be crucial, for citizen participation and acceptance of that body that was inaugurated, if you want to avoid some of these adverse comments being passed.
I see. Now, Martin Kpebu, now in the Constitutional Review Committee's recommendation, we have an independent commission that they have proposed be established to fight corruption and corruption-related offenses, or prosecute corruption and corruption-related offenses, taking that power from the Attorney General and essentially having to sort of consolidate the other agencies, OSP, SHRAJ, on the fight against corruption. Let's talk about the OSP. Do you still maintain the office had a not too pleasant or glowing year in the fight against corruption? Reason why you want Kissi Agyabeng out?
So yes, without any equivocation, I'll give the Special Prosecutor's Office a C, because I've seen, and I'm being very charitable, because we've all seen clear evidence that Kissi Agyabeng allowed Ofori-Atta to flee out of Ghana without taking Ofori-Atta in and taking bail from him. Because Ofori-Atta has 5 cases. How can you see such a person traveling? It was Kissi Agyabeng who said it, based on public pressure, that we smelled a rat, that something was happening. He came and confessed that when Ofori-Atta wrote his letter to travel, Kissi Agyabeng saw it, he intercepted it. So he saw it, that Ofori-Atta is about to travel. And that when Ofori-Atta was traveling, they saw him, but they were powerless, which is false, because so far, Kissi Agyabeng couldn't hold a press conference. He couldn't issue a press statement for the media to amplify his cry to stop Ofori-Atta from traveling. In other words, Kissi Agyabeng couldn't shout, Julo, 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 Ebi, or Kronfor. That's how we communicate locally. But we know that even though we say such statements, the case will go to court, and it's the judge who will determine whether the person is Julo or not, right? But once Kissi Agyabeng couldn't do that, and he let Ofori-Atta through, and Ofori-Atta has 5 cases, you see that spoils the whole of the special prosecutor setup. Because remember that before Kissi Agyabeng took office, Martin Amidu and others who knew him had already said Kissi Agyabeng was conflicted. Kissi Agyabeng had worked for Ofori-Atta, he had worked for Gabi Otridako. These are relations of President Kufuor. So what do we expect? The optics looks bad, that he can never fight them. He can't fight corruption. Once he had worked for Ofori-Atta, and worked for Gabi Ochiridako. So that's Akufo-Addo he's worked for, because these are relations of Akufo-Addo. So you see that he didn't have that neutrality, that impartiality. So the optics were bad, were extremely bad, but somehow we failed to notice it, and then we thought he could do the work. And now, 4 years on, we've seen that he let some people through. So you can file a petition, and then Kisei Jabi will sit on it. I'm talking about the one we've already put in the public domain. Apart from allowing Furiata to travel, and you know, I have letters from...
Right, you have already submitted a petition, in fact, to the presidency for his removal. The last time we checked, the 10 petitions as of a month ago when Felix Kwatso Fosu put out, 3 were against him and 7 against the EC chair and her deputies. Yours adding up will be about a 4th. Mensah, just a quick one on this Office of the Special Prosecutor. There was a long debate of whether to do away with it or not, and the person who is heading that office. What will be your assessment of this year 2025 and expectations into the year 2026 shortly?
So first of all, let me indicate that I support the CRC's recommendation for an independent entity, reorganizing the role of triage, taking away some powers from the Attorney General. I mean, historically, we are clear that the AGs will not be able to take on board cases that deal with his or her own peers in government. And I think that the recommendations are in the right direction for this country. Related to the current occupant, if my brother Martin and I have always disagreed on this issue, I will give the office a B+. I will say that the current occupant has done a lot. The specific issues I've raised, I mean, the gentleman was a suspect at the time. Investigations were not concluded. No charges had been filed. Nobody could have stopped that gentleman leaving. So yes, they knew he was a suspect. They were worried about that. But once they had not completed the investigations and there was no charges filed, he is innocent until proven guilty. And I think that the populist approach of saying that citizens should go to the airport and stop him is neither here nor there. That could not have worked. You would have been going against the law and found yourself in breach of the law and potentially arrested for doing anything like that. I think that we should continue to build the institution. It's the youngest amongst our anti-corruption institutions. In terms of its practical existence, it's just been barely 2 years, because they got 249 staff in the last quarter of 2023. I think that there's much more that office can do, and I'm glad that those that are there at the forefront of promoting the fight against corruption at the moment.
Right. Mensah, thank you so much for joining us. Adam Mensah is a co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. We're going to go for this quick break. When we're back, we'll switch into matters of education. Justice Abdullahi, I thank you so much for joining us as well tonight. Martin Pebu, thank you so much for joining us. Gentlemen, appreciate you. A happy new year ahead. Thank you so much. We'll be back shortly after this quick break.
Mentor Season 14, the breakout edition, is heating up, and your votes are the power behind every performance. This season, your vote doesn't only keep your favorite contestant on the stage, it also gives you the chance to win big. The voter who sent in the highest number of votes by the end of the season walks away with the brand new NASCO chest freezer. It's simple. Pick up your phone and vote for your favorite contestants to the short code on your screen and keep those votes coming. Support your star, boost their journey, and you just might walk away with a super cool freezer. Mentor, discovering the next big star and rewarding you for believing.
Welcome back. This is the year in review for the year 2025. Now, we're going to do the education sector. The Institute for Education Studies, IFS, has done a snapshot of the year 2025 and an outlook into the year 2026. It's a very interesting read. We just captured portions of it. The full details you'll find on 3news.com, but this is it. They say that basic education access is near universal. We'll put that on the screen right now. And free senior high school enrollment has exceeded 1.6 million. But infrastructure strain, teacher shortages, and also we have issues related to student indiscipline arising. I'm going to do this quick on each slide, just a quick conversation with the executive director of IFS. They put this together, Dr. Peter Partianti. Good evening, Doc. Thank you for joining us.
Alfred, thank you for having me.
Great. Now, I see this, that, yes, free senior high school, 1.6 million and over we've had the enrollment, but then the infrastructure strain is still there. In fact, that's what has led to the timelines for the phasing out of the double track extended to the next 2 years, is it not?
Yes, exactly. I think that what we are looking at is sometimes when you are moving into a new year, you need to be a little bit focused on what you want to achieve, and that should be tangible. So yes, we have challenges with infrastructure, which the Minister of Education has indicated that they are going to work massively on it in 2026 and beyond. And there have been allocations to that effect. So we are thinking that in 2026, we should not be talking about access because we have created a lot of them through the various policies that we have had over the years. We don't have challenge with access now. So the ministry should now shift focus to infrastructure development, move on to quality education in terms of how the performance of both the BEC and the WASI is going, and more importantly, touch on the moral aspect of the students in terms of their socio-emotional development, affective domain development, and in talking about that, look at have a strategy to deal with the issue of indiscipline in our secondary schools.
I see. Now, the teacher shortages is one big issue as well that you're raising there. What's your outlook for 2026? I mean, to solve this matter of the teacher shortages that you capture in your report?
Yeah, we think that there's a commitment to recruit more teachers. We are looking at it from the perspective that there should be the redeployment of teachers in 2026. The disparity between teacher allocation in the rural and urban areas should be addressed by proper redeployment and realignment of teachers across these different geographical locations. And we think that when we are able to recruit more and then do a lot more redeployment, looking at where there are excess teachers and reposting them to places where there are no teachers, we'll be able to deal with the issue of teacher shortages.
There's one bit that gets me thinking. This tertiary participation, you say, remains low at 19.2%, while TVET enrollment is growing, but the weak industry alignment persists. Now, this administration introduced the no-fee stress. So this tertiary participation that is remaining low, is it as a result of lack of access or the financial barrier which this no-fee stress was supposed to address?
So the no-fee stress is in its first year. It's been able to assist more students to at least deal with their first year payment of fees. And we think that it is something that needs to be relooked at in terms of its sustainability, because in terms of increasing the enrollment level for tertiary institutions, it goes beyond just the financial barrier. You have to also look at the infrastructure available, because those who apply for admissions, now you look at first years that are supposed to go back to school in somewhere January, you will note that most of the schools record more than 10,000 applicants, and their capacity is around 2,000, 3,000. So it means that there's a lot more deficiency in terms of infrastructure as compared to finances, because it is the 2,000 out of the 2,000 who get admission that will now have to access a certain level of financial assistance. So we are thinking that if we want to open up with our tertiary enrollment ratio, we will need to expand infrastructure a little bit more, and also make good our promise of the Open University that was put in the NDC manifesto. So going to 2026, we will need to open up infrastructure in our tertiary institutions and ensure that we are getting more people into those that level of education. Then we talk about TVET. We are saying that there's a lot of improvement that is going on in the TVET sector, and government needs to pay attention to that, because that is the area that we can use to deal with the youth unemployment. So a lot of commitment in terms of financial resources needs to be channeled to TVET in order that it solves a critical problem in our society in 2026.
And that's why you talk about industry alignment, and that also feeds directly into this graduate employability, which you say remains weak, with about 60% of tertiary graduates unemployed or underemployed. TVET, you say, is a way to go. And then maybe just your final take in a minute on how the 2026 outlook is, as captured in this report.
So the message is simple. We think that our policies over the years have really dealt with the issue of access. Now, going in 2026, the Ministry of Education should be more interested in the caliber of students that are getting out of our educational institutions. If you look at all the reforms that we've done, we try to indicate that the student who is leaving the secondary education level is prepared for the world of work, which is not the case in its real practicality. And more importantly, when the student leaves senior high school, he does not pass, his life comes to a standstill. So the issue of quality education and discipline should be the target of the Ministry of Education getting into 2026, so that the students that have gained access are now going to benefit from good education, and then we will also be able to deal with, shape their behavior, their personality, their total personality, so that they become resourceful to the community and the society, and as a matter of fact, in the country.
Dr. Anti, thank you very much for this, and a happy new year ahead. Dr. Peter Patti-Anti is the Executive Director of the Institute for Education Studies, IFES. They put together this snapshot of the 2025 education sector report, and then also an outlook into 2026. The full complement of this report you'll find on 3news.com. There's more news on 3news.com. As I indicated, this year in review, we're serializing in text as well on 3news.com. So the sector-specific analysis of the year 2025, you'll see and read on 3news.com. But we continue this year in review focus on specific sectors tomorrow as well on New Day and on News Central, News 360, Ghana Tonight. We'll look at other sectors as well that we haven't touched on as yet. But on behalf of the rest of the team, we do appreciate your company. I am Alfred Okonse. Have a good night.